Chapter 0, FIS. This book is not written for scholars who sit in ivory towers and debate abstract ideas for their own sake. It is not written for those who treat problems as mere intellectual puzzles to be admired but never solved. It is written for the ordinary men and women who struggle every single day of their lives. For those who carry the heavy burden of unhappiness on their shoulders from morning until night, and who want, more than anything else in the world, to put that burden down and be free. Bertrand Russell wrote this book in 1930, a time of great uncertainty between two devastating world wars, a time when millions of people felt lost, confused, and disconnected from any sense of meaning. A time that looks much like our own in many ways. Russell himself had known deep and lasting unhappiness from his earliest years. As a child, he was profoundly lonely after losing both his parents at a very young age. He was raised by his grandparents in a strict Victorian household where emotions were suppressed and affection was rare. He spent long hours alone in his grandfather's vast library, reading philosophy and wondering what the point of his existence was. As a young man, he searched everywhere for meaning, in mathematics and logic, in philosophy and politics, in love and adventure. He found some answers along the way, but he also found that many of the things he had been taught about happiness were simply wrong. And this discovery led him to write a book that would help others avoid the same mistakes he had made. The book is not a perfect system that works for everyone in every possible situation. It is not a miracle cure that dissolves all pain with a single magical sentence. It is a set of practical principles that have been tested in the real fires of real life, and that actually work when you apply them with patience, honesty, and persistence. Russell calls this book The Conquest of Happiness, and the choice of words is deliberate. Not the theory of happiness, because this is not an abstract philosophical treatise. Not the philosophy of happiness, because this is not a set of ideas to be debated in universities. The conquest of happiness, because happiness for most people is not a gift that falls into your lap like a ripe fruit from a tree. It is a battle you must fight with all your strength, a ground you must take and hold against hostile forces, a territory you must conquer through sustained effort and courage. The book is divided into two clear parts that complement each other perfectly. Part 1 examines the causes of unhappiness in detail, asking the hard questions that most people avoid. What makes people miserable, even when they have everything they thought they wanted? Why do so many people fail to find joy in their daily lives? What patterns of thought and behavior keep us trapped in unhappiness without our even realizing it? Part 2 then examines the causes of happiness, offering a positive path forward based on understanding and action. Russell does not preach from a pulpit like a moralizing clergyman telling you what to do. He speaks from direct personal experience and from a lifetime of observing human nature. He has seen the rich and powerful who were miserable despite all their money and influence. He has seen the poor and simple who were joyful despite all their hardships and limitations. He has seen the successful who felt completely empty inside, wondering what the point of it all was. And he has seen the failures who found genuine peace and contentment. He has traveled the world extensively, from the drawing rooms of London to the villages of China, from the universities of America to the markets of India. He has observed human nature in all its forms, in all its cultures, in all its endless contradictions. The result of all this observation and experience is a book that is brutally honest about the human condition. Sometimes uncomfortable to read because it tells you things you would rather not hear, but always practical and always grounded in real life, not in abstract philosophy divorced from experience. There are no empty promises in this book, no claims that happiness is easy or that you can achieve it without effort. There are no mystical solutions that require you to abandon your reason or join a cult. Just clear thinking applied to the oldest and most universal human problem: How to be happy in a world that often seems designed to make you unhappy. Russell believes that most human unhappiness is completely unnecessary. It comes from mistaken views of the world that we have absorbed without ever questioning them. It comes from false ethics that we were taught as children and never grew out of. It comes from bad habits of mind that we repeat day after day until they become automatic and invisible to us. All of these can be changed if you are willing to do the work. Not overnight, of course, because habits take time to build and time to break. But with consistent effort and honest self-examination over weeks and months. The conquest of happiness is possible for anyone who is willing to learn and change. For anyone who is willing to question their most deeply held assumptions about life. Read this book carefully and apply what it teaches to your own life. You will discover what Russell discovered through a lifetime of searching and thinking. That happiness is not a distant dream that you pursue forever without ever reaching it. It is a choice that you make every single day. A choice about where you direct your attention. A choice about what you value and what you let go of. A choice about how you relate to yourself, to others, and to the world. The journey begins right now with the first page. Turn it and begin. Chapter 1. What makes people unhappy? There is a question that haunts every human being at some point in their lives. You have asked it in the dark hours of the night when sleep refuses to come and the ceiling is the only thing you can see. You have asked it when the weight of existence presses down on your chest and you cannot breathe. You have looked at your life and wondered why you feel so empty when by all external measures you have so much. Bertrand Russell asked this question too. He asked it as a lonely child growing up in a cold Victorian household after the death of both his parents. He asked it as a young philosopher searching for certainty in a world that seemed to have none. He asked it as a man who had experienced love, success, fame, and still felt something was missing. But he did not look for the answer in the stars, or in the hands of fate, or in the promises of religion. He looked in the ordinary details of daily life, in the small moments that make up the fabric of existence. He looked at the way people spend their mornings, the way they talk to their spouses, the way they think about themselves when no one is watching. And he found that happiness is not a mystery that requires a philosopher to unravel. Unhappiness is not a mystery either. Both have clear causes that can be identified, understood, and changed. Most people are unhappy, Russell believes, because they have built their lives on the wrong foundation entirely. They chase what they think will make them happy with all their energy and all their time. Money, of course, because money buys comfort and security and the respect of others. Status, because status proves you matter in the eyes of the world. Pleasure, because pleasure feels good in the moment and distracts from the emptiness underneath. Recognition, because recognition confirms that your existence has meaning. And when they finally get these things, after years of struggle and sacrifice and compromise, they find themselves emptier than before. Why does this happen? How can the achievement of everything you wanted leave you feeling nothing? Because the real causes of happiness and unhappiness are not what most people think they are. We have been taught the wrong causes by our parents, our schools, our culture, and our media, and we have believed them without ever questioning whether they are true. Russell divides the causes of unhappiness into two broad categories. There are causes rooted in the social system, which affect large numbers of people at once. And there are causes rooted in individual psychology, which are unique to each person. The social sources of unhappiness are obvious to anyone who cares to look. Poverty that crushes the human spirit and leaves no room for joy or hope or ambition. Disease that wastes the body and drains all the energy that could be used for living. Oppression that denies people their basic dignity and treats them as less than human. War that destroys everything that has been carefully built over generations. These are real causes of suffering, and they affect millions of people around the world at this very moment. But Russell is not writing a political manifesto that calls for revolution. He is not proposing to overthrow the entire social order before happiness becomes possible. He is writing a practical guide for individuals who want to find happiness within the circumstances they already have. And the individual, he insists, has more power over his own happiness than he thinks. Much more power. The first step toward happiness is to stop blaming the world for your unhappiness. This is a difficult step because blaming the world is so satisfying. It gives you a story to tell yourself and others. It makes you the innocent victim of cruel circumstances. It absolves you of any responsibility for your own misery. But it also makes you powerless. If the world is the cause of your unhappiness, then only a change in the world can make you happy. And you cannot change the whole world. The world is what it is. It is imperfect, unfair, and often deeply cruel. You can change your small corner of it through your actions, your choices, and your influence on the people around you. But you cannot change all of it. What you can change is yourself. Not by force of will alone, which rarely works for long because the will gets tired, but by understanding the hidden causes of your own unhappiness that operate beneath the surface of your conscious mind. The first hidden cause is self-absorption. This is the tendency to think about yourself constantly, to measure everything by how it affects you, to be always aware of your own feelings and your own status and your own needs. The person who thinks constantly about himself cannot be happy. He is like a dog chasing its own tail, running in circles and getting absolutely nowhere. The more you focus on yourself, the more miserable you become. Your problems grow larger in your mind until they fill the entire horizon and block out everything else. Your disappointments become tragedies of Shakespearean proportions. Your minor faults become monstrous failures that define who you are, and the world outside you fades away into irrelevance because it does not matter compared to the drama inside your head. But the world outside is where happiness actually lives. Happiness lives in genuine interest in things that have nothing to do with you personally. In the beauty of a sunset that you simply watch without analyzing how it relates to your problems. In the fascination of a novel that transports you into another world entirely for a few hours. In the satisfaction of work that demands all your attention and all your skill without leaving room for self-consciousness. Happiness also lives in genuine affection for other people that is not driven by what they can do for you. In the warmth of friendship that asks nothing from you except your genuine presence. In the joy of love that is given freely without keeping score or demanding repayment. In the simple act of caring about someone else's happiness as much as you care about your own. The second hidden cause of unhappiness is the wrong kind of ambition. Ambition itself is not the problem at all. Healthy ambition gives direction and purpose to your life. It provides a reason to get out of bed in the morning. It creates a sense of progress and achievement. It is the ambition that drives you to constantly compare yourself with others that destroys happiness completely. The man who measures his worth entirely by his income will never be satisfied, because there is always someone richer. The woman who measures her worth entirely by her appearance will always find flaws, because there is always someone more beautiful. The artist who measures his worth entirely by his fame will always feel unrecognized, because there is always someone more famous. This trap of constant comparison has no bottom and no exit. You can fall into it forever and never reach the ground. And the more you compare yourself to others, the more dissatisfied you become with what you have. The third hidden cause of unhappiness is the fear of what others think of you. We are social animals by nature, and our survival once depended on being accepted by the group. Caring about the opinions of others is natural and not inherently bad. It becomes a problem when this fear rules your life completely, when it determines your choices and limits your possibilities. When this fear rules you, you become a puppet dancing on strings pulled by other people. You choose a safe career instead of a passionate one because your parents would approve. You marry the acceptable person instead of the one you love because society expects it. You express the approved opinions instead of your real ones because you fear being judged and rejected. You live a life that looks perfect from the outside and feels hollow from the inside. And the tragedy is that you may never even realize how much of yourself you have sacrificed. Russell does not offer a quick fix for any of these problems. There is no magic pill you can swallow, no secret formula you can apply, no 7-step program that guarantees results. He offers something more valuable and more lasting. He offers a way of thinking that you can apply to any situation, a method for examining your own mind honestly, a framework for discovering where your unhappiness truly comes from. The first step is simple honesty. Brutal, uncomfortable honesty with yourself. Why are you unhappy? Not the answer you give to your friends at parties when they ask how you are doing. The real answer that you hide even from yourself because it is too painful to admit. That answer is inside you right now, waiting to be discovered, and you have the power to act on it. This entire book is designed to show you how to do that. Not through magic or religion or positive thinking. Through clear understanding, consistent effort, and the slow, steady conquest of the habits of mind that keep you prisoner. The first chapter is already behind you now. The rest of the journey is up to you. Chapter 2. BYRONIC UNHAPPINESS. There is a young man sitting alone in a room in the city of London in the year 1930. He is handsome and intelligent and well-educated at the best schools in the country. He comes from a good family with enough money to live comfortably. By every external measure that society uses to measure success, he has everything a young man could possibly want. And he is absolutely and completely miserable. But he does not try to change his situation in any way. Instead, he tells himself a comfortable story that justifies his misery. He believes that his unhappiness is actually a sign of depth and sensitivity and superior intelligence. He believes that happiness is only for shallow people who do not think deeply about the meaning of life. He believes that to be truly wise is to be truly sad and melancholic, because only a fool or an ignoramus could possibly be cheerful in a world as terrible as this one. This attitude has a name, and Russell gives it to you clearly. It is the Byronic attitude, named after the famous poet Lord Byron, who made suffering seem glamorous and romantic in the 19th century. Byron was a brilliant poet who lived a dramatic and tragic life and died young in a foreign war. He made suffering seem noble and profound and deeply attractive. He made it seem as though the deepest and most sensitive souls were inevitably the most unhappy ones, and this seductive idea has infected Western culture ever since. Russell has absolutely no patience at all for this attitude. He has seen it too many times in young intellectuals, and he knows exactly what it is. He calls it what it truly is, complete nonsense dressed up in fancy philosophical clothes, not because suffering is unreal or unimportant, because suffering is very real and very painful, but because the Byronic attitude mistakes a symptom for a virtue. The unhappy man wraps himself in his unhappiness like a warm cloak that protects him from the cold world. He believes that his suffering makes him interesting and profound and superior to ordinary happy people. In truth, it makes him none of these things at all. It only makes him more unhappy than he already is. It traps him in a cycle of self-pity that becomes harder and harder to escape the longer he stays in it. The Byronic attitude is especially common and persistent among intellectuals and artists and creative people. They read books about despair written by other intellectuals who were also trapped in the same cycle. They write poems and novels and essays about the meaninglessness of existence. They gather in cafes and bars and discuss the absurdity of life with great seriousness and dramatic intensity, and they mistake this intellectual exercise for genuine wisdom about how to live a real human life. But Russell asks a very simple question that cuts through all this intellectual nonsense, like a sharp knife. If life is truly meaningless and worthless, as you insist it is, why are you still eating breakfast every single morning? Why are you still breathing air and drinking water and seeking shelter from the cold? Why do you still care when someone you love is hurt or sick or dying? The truth is that even the most convinced philosophical pessimist lives his life exactly as if it matters. He just refuses to admit this obvious fact because admitting it would require him to change his entire attitude and worldview. The Byronic pessimist has a secret that he hides even from himself. He is afraid, deeply and genuinely afraid. Afraid of being disappointed by life if he allows himself to hope for anything good. Afraid of trying to change his circumstances and failing publicly and looking foolish. Afraid of being genuinely vulnerable to the pain that inevitably comes with caring deeply about things. So he lowers all his expectations in advance as a defense mechanism against disappointment. He declares that nothing is worthwhile, that all efforts are completely futile, that happiness is an illusion. He does all this so that he never has to face the real pain of trying something important and failing at it. This is not wisdom at all, no matter how philosophical and profound it sounds in conversation. It is cowardice dressed up as insight, a defense mechanism disguised as a profound worldview. There is a second form of Byronic unhappiness that Russell identifies from his own personal experience with young intellectuals in London. It comes from the experience of thwarted power and blocked ambition. The young intellectual has great ambitions and great plans and great confidence in his own abilities. He knows he is brilliant, and he expects the world to recognize his brilliance immediately. But the world does not listen to him because he is young and unknown and has no power yet. He is ignored by the people who are already in charge of this. He is poor because his talents are not valued by a market that does not yet know he exists. He is completely powerless to make the changes he knows are necessary. And so he turns his bitter disappointment into a philosophical creed that justifies his failure. The world is corrupt and stupid and does not deserve his genius, he tells himself. The world is run by fools who cannot recognize real talent when they see it standing right in front of them. The world has rejected him, so he will reject the entire world in return. Russell saw this pattern repeatedly in his own young friends and acquaintances throughout his life. They were brilliant and talented and full of potential. And they were absolutely miserable because they demanded that the world notice them immediately. And the world, as always, was far too busy with its own affairs to oblige them. The cure for Byronic unhappiness is not complicated or mysterious or difficult to understand, but it is humbling and painful for proud young intellectuals to accept and practice. You must first admit that your misery is not a badge of honor that proves your depth and sensitivity. It is a problem to be solved, exactly like any other problem in life. You must stop demanding that the world admire you and recognize your genius immediately. And you must start finding things in the world that are genuinely worth admiring, regardless of whether they admire you in return. The intellectual who can make this fundamental shift in perspective, who can set aside his wounded ego for a while, who can find genuine interest in something outside himself, that person will discover something unexpected and wonderful. The door to happiness opens not with a grand dramatic gesture, but with a small and quiet shift of attention, a shift away from yourself and toward the world around you. It is not dramatic or poetic or romantic, but it works, and that is what ultimately matters. Chapter 3. Competition. You are living in a race that you never chose to enter and that has no finish line. From the very first day of school, you are taught to compete against everyone around you. Get better grades than the other children in your class. Get into a better secondary school than your friends. Get a better university place than your classmates. Get a better job and a higher salary than the people you graduated with. Buy a bigger house and a faster car than your neighbors and colleagues. Marry a more attractive and successful partner than the people you know. And when you have done all of this, when you have won every competition that society placed in front of you, when you have accumulated all the status symbols and financial security you were told to pursue, you look around at all your achievements and you feel absolutely nothing at all. The race has no real finish line that you can ever reach. It keeps extending ahead of you forever, like a treadmill that never stops. There is always another promotion to chase, a higher income level to reach, a more impressive status symbol to acquire. And as you keep running on this endless treadmill, you grow more tired and more anxious and more empty inside with every passing year. Russell identifies this as the problem of competition, and he considers it one of the great destructive diseases of the modern world. It is especially intense and severe in America and the countries of Western Europe, where the single-minded pursuit of material success has become a kind of religion that almost everyone follows without ever questioning. The competitive man cannot stop running even when he desperately wants to. He works longer and longer hours every year of his life. He takes fewer and fewer vacations and holidays. He skips meals to save a few minutes of time. He drinks coffee and stimulants to stay awake during the day. He takes sleeping pills at night to force his exhausted body to rest. He calls this behavior ambition and drive and dedication. But it is really an addiction, pure and simple and destructive. An addiction to the feeling of winning that never lasts, and an even stronger addiction to the fear of losing that never goes away. He has completely forgotten why he wanted to win in the first place. He wanted to win because he genuinely believed that winning would finally make him happy. But the relentless pursuit of victory has made happiness completely impossible for him. Here is the central paradox that Russell wants you to understand clearly. The more you focus entirely on being successful by external measures, the less likely you are to achieve any genuine or lasting success. Why is this true? Because success in any meaningful field, in any endeavor that actually matters, requires a certain amount of detachment from the outcome. The best work in any field is always done by people who genuinely love the work itself for its own sake, not by people who love only the rewards that the work might bring them. The artist who paints purely for money will never paint anything truly great or lasting. The scientist who researches only for fame and recognition will never make a genuine discovery. The business person who works only for personal wealth will make poor decisions driven by short-term thinking and greed. When the goal is entirely external, the work becomes merely a means to a separate end. And work that is done only as a means to something else is very rarely first-rate work of any kind. Russell gives a vivid and memorable example from his own observation of people he knew personally throughout his life. He knew a man who worked 16 hours a day, every single day without exception, for decades. He had a single-minded focus on building a massive fortune through sheer relentless effort. And he succeeded in financial terms beyond his wildest dreams. But his physical health was destroyed by constant stress and lack of rest. His marriage became completely empty and meaningless because he was never sat at home. His children became strangers to him because he never spent any real time with them as they grew up. And when he finally had all the money he could possibly want or use in 100 lifetimes, he found that he could not enjoy any of it at all. He had completely forgotten how to live a normal human life. He had lost the capacity for simple, everyday pleasures. He had sacrificed everything that actually matters in life for something that turned out to be completely worthless. The cure for the deadly disease of competitive obsession is not laziness or lack of ambition, as many people fear. It is proportion and balance in every area of your life. You must decide for yourself what actually matters to you as a unique individual, not what society tells you should matter, not what your parents and teachers think matters, not what your neighbors and colleagues and competitors are all chasing. What you genuinely value when you are completely honest with yourself in the quiet hours. You must draw a clear line in your life and commit to it with conviction. Enough money for reasonable comfort and genuine security, not the maximum possible. Enough success for genuine self-respect and the respect of people you actually care about. And then you must stop running and use your remaining energy for actually living your life. For building real friendships that are not based on mutual advantage or career networking. For experiencing genuine love that is not about what you can get from the other person. For the simple and profound pleasures that make life sweet and worth living. Russell is not against work at all. He worked hard his entire life and produced an extraordinary body of work. He is against work that consumes your entire existence and leaves nothing left for living. He is not against ambition at all. He was one of the most ambitious thinkers of his generation. He is against ambition that destroys your capacity for joy and human connection entirely. The wise person knows when to compete with full effort and when to rest completely. When to strive for more and when to simply be grateful for what already exists. This balance of proportion is the secret that the competitive world will never teach you. Because the competitive world has a deep vested interest in keeping you running forever without ever stopping. But you can make a different choice. You can choose to stop running and start living. Chapter 4. Boredom and Excitement. In the year 1930, Bertrand Russell observed something very strange happening in the modern world around him. The more exciting life became with all the new inventions and technologies, the more bored people seemed to feel. They had radios that brought music and news into their homes at the turn of a dial. They had automobiles that could carry them anywhere they wanted to go, at speeds their grandparents could not have imagined. They had cinemas with moving pictures that told stories in ways never before possible. They had more stimulation available to them in a single day than their ancestors experienced in an entire lifetime, and yet they complained of boredom more bitterly than any generation before them had ever done. Why was this happening? How could more stimulation lead to more boredom instead of less? Russell understood the answer, and it is a truth that has only become more important in our own time of smartphones and social media and endless entertainment. Excitement and boredom are not opposite ends of a spectrum, as most people believe. They are partners in a dangerous dance, each one feeding the other. When you fill every moment of your day with stimulation from external sources, you gradually lose the capacity for quiet contentment that comes from within. Your nerves become addicted to excitement, exactly like a drug. You need more and more stimulation just to feel normal and comfortable. A quiet evening at home begins to feel unbearable. A walk in nature without headphones seems empty and pointless. Sitting alone with your own thoughts becomes something to avoid at all costs, and when the stimulation stops, as it inevitably must, you crash hard into boredom and restlessness. You reach for your phone, or turn on the television, or open another tab in your browser. Anything to escape the quiet that now feels like a threat. Russell saw this pattern clearly almost 100 years ago, long before the internet or television, or even widespread radio. The modern person cannot sit still for even a few minutes. He cannot be alone with his own thoughts without feeling uncomfortable. He cannot enjoy a simple evening without some form of entertainment. He must always be doing something, going somewhere, watching something, listening to something. This constant need for external stimulation is not a sign of vitality and aliveness, as many people believe. It is a sign of inner emptiness and poverty, a sign that you have not developed the inner resources that make a person truly self-sufficient. The person who is genuinely comfortable with himself does not need constant distraction. He can sit in a garden for an hour and simply watch the clouds move across the sky with complete contentment. He can take a walk through the neighborhood and notice the small details of houses and gardens and people. He can read a book without checking his phone every few minutes for new messages. He can be completely alone without feeling the slightest bit lonely. Boredom is not the enemy that must be fought and defeated at all costs. It is actually a valuable signal that you should pay attention to. Boredom tells you that your inner life has become starved of nourishment. It tells you that you have not developed the resources to be happy with yourself and your own company. The solution is not more excitement and more stimulation. The solution is less of both, combined with the deliberate cultivation of inner resources. You must build the capacity for quiet enjoyment, for the simple pleasures that do not require a ticket or a screen or an internet connection. Russell points to the lives of peasants and simple people in rural communities as examples of this capacity, not because he naively idealizes poverty hardship, which he does not, but because these people have retained something that the modern urban person has lost. They know how to be content with small things, with the ordinary pleasures that cost nothing and require nothing. The taste of fresh bread after a long day of work, the warmth of the sun on your skin after a cold morning, the company of a friend who sits with you in silence without needing to fill every moment with talk, the satisfaction of work that you can see and touch and feel at the end of the day. These things do not excite you in the way that a Hollywood movie or a video game might excite you, but they satisfy you at a much deeper level, a level that lasts and endures. The happiest people Russell has observed in his life are not those who have the most excitement. They are those who have learned the subtle and valuable art of calm contentment. They can find genuine pleasure in the ordinary and the everyday. They do not need to constantly escape from themselves and their own company. They have built an inner world that is rich enough and interesting enough to sustain them through any circumstances. This is the real conquest of boredom, not by fighting against it or drowning it out with more stimulation, but by transcending it entirely, by becoming the kind of person who simply does not need to be entertained from the outside, who can find endless interest in the world as it is, without any artificial enhancement. It is a skill, like any other valuable skill. Anyone can learn it with practice and patience, but only those who practice it consistently will keep it and benefit from it. And the reward for learning this skill is nothing less than freedom from the endless craving for more excitement that makes so many people miserable. Chapter 5: Fatigue. You wake up in the morning already feeling tired before the day has even begun. You drag yourself out of bed and drink coffee to jumpstart your nervous system. You feel a little better for a while, enough to get through the morning. You go to work and push yourself through the hours until lunchtime. At lunch, you feel the familiar slump in your energy levels. You eat something quick and convenient, not because you are hungry, but because you know you should eat. You push yourself through the afternoon with more coffee and sheer willpower. By evening, you are completely exhausted, both physically and mentally. But your mind refuses to stop running. It keeps going in circles, worrying about tomorrow, regretting things from yesterday, imagining disaster scenarios that will probably never happen. You lie in bed exhausted but unable to sleep because your mind will not be quiet. You stare at the ceiling for hours, and in the morning you wake up tired all over again, starting the whole terrible cycle once more. This is the modern condition, and Russell recognizes it as one of the greatest obstacles to happiness, but he makes a crucial distinction that most people miss. There are two completely different kinds of fatigue, and they have very different effects on your well-being. The first kind is physical fatigue, the tiredness that comes from using your body all day. This kind of fatigue is actually healthy and good for you. A farmer who works in the fields from sunrise to sunset is physically tired at the end of the day, but he sleeps deeply and peacefully through the night. He wakes up in the morning feeling refreshed and ready for another day. His physical fatigue is a natural signal that his body has been used well and needs rest to recover. The second kind of fatigue is mental fatigue, and this is the dangerous kind. It comes not from physical exertion, but from constant worry and anxiety and mental churning. It does not go away with rest and sleep, because the mind never truly rests. It keeps working on your problems even while you sleep, turning them over and over without reaching any resolution. You wake up still tired because your mind has been working all night. This mental fatigue is the enemy of happiness. It drains your energy for everything that matters. It clouds your thinking and makes it hard to make good decisions. It makes you irritable with the people you love. It takes all the joy out of activities that should be pleasurable. And it creates a vicious cycle that is hard to break, because the more tired you are, the more you worry about everything. And the more you worry, the more tired you become. How do you break this terrible cycle that keeps so many people trapped? Russell has practical answers that are based on his own experience and observation. First, you must learn the art of compartmentalization. When your workday is finished, you must let it be truly finished. Do not carry your work home with you in your mind. Do not think about work problems during your evening hours. Do not talk about work when you are supposed to be relaxing. Let your mind have a complete rest from work during the hours when you are not being paid to think about it. This sounds simple, but it requires real discipline to accomplish. The discipline to tell yourself that you have done what you could for today. The discipline to trust that the world will not fall apart if you stop worrying for a few hours. The discipline to believe that problems will still be there tomorrow and that you will be better equipped to solve them after a proper rest. Second, you must learn to face your fears directly instead of avoiding them. Most of what we worry about never actually happens. Our minds are masters of imagining disasters that never come to pass. We rehearse difficult conversations that never take place. We build enormous mountains out of tiny molehills. We suffer more in our imagination than we ever do in reality. And this imaginary suffering exhausts us far more than real problems ever could. The remedy is simple courage, the courage to look at the worst-case scenario honestly and realize that you can survive it. Even if the worst happens, and it almost never does, you will find a way to cope. You are stronger than you think you are. Third, and this is perhaps the most important point, you must develop interests and activities that have nothing to do with your main work and responsibilities. The person whose whole life is invested in a single area has no buffer or protection. When that one area of life goes badly, everything goes badly for that person. There is no refuge, no escape, no place to rest and recover. But the person with many interests, who reads history for pleasure, who follows sports, who enjoys music, who gardens, who plays chess, who studies birds, that person has multiple refuges and sanctuaries. When one part of life becomes difficult, the other parts sustain and comfort that person. The energy that might otherwise be consumed by worry is instead directed into productive and enjoyable activities. Mental fatigue is not a life sentence that you must endure forever. It is a pattern that you have learned, and patterns can be unlearned and replaced with better ones. The first step is recognizing that this kind of fatigue is not inevitable. It is a bad habit of mind, and like all bad habits, it can be replaced with healthier ones if you are willing to do the work. Chapter 6. Envy. There is a poison that runs silently through modern life, and almost everyone has tasted it at some point. You see someone you know achieve something you have been working toward. A promotion at work, a successful project, a happy relationship, a recognition of their talents, and instead of feeling happy for them, you feel something else entirely. A small pang of bitterness in your chest. A quiet resentment that whispers, why them and not me? This feeling is envy, and Russell identifies it as one of the greatest sources of human unhappiness that exists. The envious person suffers twice over for every single event. First, he suffers from his own lack and insufficiency. Second, he suffers from the success and good fortune of others. His neighbor's good fortune becomes his personal torment. The beauty of the world becomes an insult to him. Every happy couple he sees reminds him of his own loneliness. Every successful person he meets reminds him of his own failures. Envy is a hunger that can never be satisfied, no matter how much you get, because there is always someone who has more than you do. If you become the richest person in your town, you will envy the richest person in the next town. If you become the most famous person in your country, you will envy the most famous person in the world. If you become the most successful person in the world, you will envy the people who were successful before you. The object of envy keeps shifting, but the feeling of envy never goes away. The envious man looks at his neighbor's bigger house with its beautiful garden, and his own house feels smaller and shabbier than it ever did before. He looks at his friend's apparently happy marriage, and his own relationship seems more strained and disappointing. He looks at his colleague's faster promotion and bigger salary, and his own steady progress feels like failure. Each of these comparisons is a small wound that accumulates over time. He does not see his own blessings and advantages at all, because he is so focused on the blessings of others, and this selective blindness makes him profoundly and permanently miserable. Russell points out a very interesting observation about envy. It is especially common in democratic and egalitarian societies where everyone is supposedly equal. In a traditional caste system, the peasant does not envy the prince because they exist in completely separate worlds with different rules. But in a democracy where everyone is told they can achieve anything, the gap between expectation and reality creates endless opportunities for envy. Children are naturally envious of each other, but most children outgrow this as they develop and mature. Adults who remain envious have not fully matured as human beings. They have not learned the essential skill of finding genuine satisfaction in their own lives, regardless of what others are doing. They still measure themselves entirely by comparison with others. And as the old saying goes, comparison is the thief of joy. How do you conquer this poison of envy that destroys so much happiness? The first step is honest self-examination. You must admit to yourself that you feel envious. Do not pretend that you are above such emotions. Do not rationalize your envy as righteous indignation or a sense of justice. Call it by its real name and face it directly. The second step is understanding the roots of your envy. Envy is almost always a form of self-pity dressed up in different clothes. It is a way of saying that you deserve what someone else has, that life has been unfair to you, that you have been cheated. But life does not give you what you deserve, whatever that means. Life gives you what it gives you, and your job is to make the best of the hand you have been dealt, not to complain endlessly about the hands that others have received. The third step is the most important and the most transformative. You must turn your attention outward, away from yourself and away from comparisons with others. Develop genuine interest in things that have nothing to do with your own status or success. When you are truly absorbed in a fascinating book that transports you to another world. When you are captivated by beautiful music that fills your mind completely. When you are genuinely interested in another person's story and experience. When you are focused on a task that demands all your skill and attention. In those moments, envy simply dissolves and disappears because it has nothing to feed on. Envy requires you to be looking at yourself and measuring yourself against others. When you stop measuring, envy stops growing because its food supply has been cut off. Russell is not saying that you should be passive and accept whatever life gives you without trying to improve your situation. He is saying that you should redirect your energy from resentment to constructive action. Instead of envying successful people, learn from them. Instead of resenting the fortunate, find your own fortune in your own way and at your own pace. The conquest of envy is not achieved in a single dramatic battle. It is a daily practice that you must maintain throughout your life. A choice that you make every morning when you wake up. To look at your own garden and tend it with care. Instead of staring at your neighbor's garden and wishing it were yours. Chapter 7. The sense of sin. Every human being has done something wrong at some point in their lives. This is simply part of being human, of being imperfect, of learning and growing. But for some people, the weight of that wrongness never lifts no matter how much time passes. They carry it with them every single day, like a heavy stone in their chest. There is a voice inside their head that constantly tells them they are bad, unworthy, damaged, broken beyond repair. This voice may sound like their own voice, but it is really the voice of parents and teachers and religious authorities from their childhood. This is what Russell calls the sense of sin, and he believes it is one of the deepest and most destructive sources of human unhappiness. The sense of sin comes from many different sources that reinforce each other. Religion is the most obvious and traditional source, teaching that human beings are born sinful and naturally wicked. Only by following a strict set of rules can you be saved from your own evil nature. Break those rules even once, and you deserve punishment, perhaps eternal punishment. If you have absorbed this belief deeply, as many people have, it poisons every aspect of your existence. You cannot enjoy harmless pleasures without feeling guilty afterward. You cannot relax and be at ease because you feel you should be doing something more productive or virtuous. You cannot love freely and openly because there is always shame lurking underneath. The sense of sin creates a fundamental split in your personality that tears you apart from the inside. One part of you wants to live fully, to experience joy, to satisfy your natural desires. Another part of you condemns you for having these desires in the first place. The result of this internal conflict is paralysis and misery. You cannot fully pursue what would genuinely make you happy because your inner judge keeps telling you it is wrong. And you cannot fully embrace your inner judge either because your natural instincts keep pushing back. You are stuck in the middle, unable to move in either direction, constantly at war with yourself. This is not a healthy or sustainable way to live. Russell wants to be very clear about what he is saying here. He is not advocating for immorality or for doing whatever you want without regard for others. He is advocating for a rational morality based on real harm rather than ancient taboos and irrational prohibitions. The question you must ask yourself is simple but profound. Does your action actually harm anyone, including yourself? If the answer is no, if no real harm is done to anyone, then there is no rational reason to feel guilty. Not even if tradition or religion or your parents said it was wrong. Tradition can be wrong. Religion can be wrong. Parents can be wrong. And you have the right and the responsibility to question all of them. The person who feels guilty about harmless pleasures is a person divided against himself, torn by an unnecessary internal war. That person cannot be whole, and a person who is not whole cannot be truly happy. The cure for this destructive sense of sin is reason applied consistently over time. You must examine your conscience carefully and ask it the hard questions. Why do I feel guilty about this? Is there a real victim who has been harmed by my action? Is there real damage that has been done? Or am I following rules that no longer make any sense in my adult life? Rules that were imposed on me by fearful adults when I was too young to question them. If you discover that your guilt is irrational, as it often is, you must argue against it actively every single day. You must repeat the rational truth to yourself until your unconscious mind finally accepts what your conscious mind already knows. This takes time because the sense of sin has deep roots that were planted long ago. But it can be uprooted with patience, with honesty, and with the courage to question everything you have been taught. Even your own guilt deserves to be questioned. Especially your own guilt, because it may be the most important thing you ever question. Russell also warns against the opposite error, which is equally dangerous. Some people feel no guilt at all even when they have genuinely harmed others. They can hurt people without remorse, lie without shame, exploit without conscience. This is not freedom from the sense of sin. This is a different kind of sickness, one that makes a person dangerous to everyone around them. The goal of a healthy life is not to eliminate conscience entirely. It is to educate and refine your conscience so that it serves life instead of suppressing it. You want a conscience that guides you wisely without terrorizing you. That lets you know when you have genuinely done wrong without making you feel worthless for minor infractions. That helps you grow and learn from your mistakes without punishing you endlessly for them. When your conscience is properly educated and aligned with reason and compassion, when it is your friend and guide instead of your judge and executioner, then you are finally free, and genuine happiness becomes possible for the first time in your life. Chapter 8. Persecution Mania. There is a type of person you have certainly encountered in your life, perhaps at work or in your family or among your acquaintances. This person believes that the world is fundamentally against him. Every small slight is interpreted as a deliberate attack on his dignity. Every mistake he makes is someone else's fault because he could not possibly be wrong. Every misfortune that befalls him is part of a larger conspiracy to keep him down. He is always the victim in every story he tells. He is always innocent of any wrongdoing. He is always misunderstood and unappreciated by everyone around him. This pattern of thinking is what Russell calls persecution mania. Not the extreme clinical kind that requires hospitalization, but the everyday kind that is common in offices and families and social circles. The person with this pattern of thinking cannot see his own faults and limitations at all. He has a blind spot where his own shortcomings should be visible. He sees only the faults of others with perfect clarity. He is always right about everything, and everyone else is always wrong. And because of this fundamental distortion in his perception, he is always and permanently unhappy. Why is he so unhappy? Because he has placed his entire happiness in the hands of other people, people he believes are constantly plotting against him. If only they would finally recognize his genius and talent. If only they would treat him with the respect he deserves. If only they would appreciate all his efforts and contributions. Then and only then would he be happy. But they never do recognize him, never treat him well, never appreciate his contributions. And so he is never happy, waiting forever for a recognition that will never come. Russell traces this problem to its root cause in human psychology. The person with persecution mania dramatically exaggerates his own importance in the world. He genuinely believes that he is the center of the universe, that everyone is thinking about him, that every event revolves around him. When someone passes him on the street without saying hello, it must be a deliberate snub. When a colleague disagrees with his idea at a meeting, it must be a personal attack. When life does not go his way, it must be because unseen enemies are working against him. The truth, which he cannot accept, is much simpler and much less dramatic. Most people are far too busy with their own lives and their own problems to spend time thinking about him at all. They are not plotting against him behind his back. They are not scheming to keep him down. They are not conspiring to deny him the recognition he deserves. They are simply living their own lives, paying attention to their own concerns, and barely noticing his existence. And this ordinary reality is what the persecuted person cannot bear to accept. The idea that he is not the center of everyone's attention is too painful for his ego to tolerate. So he creates a dramatic story in which he is the hero and everyone else is the villain. The cure for persecution mania is humility, which is one of the most difficult virtues to acquire. You must accept the uncomfortable truth that you are not as important as you think you are. Your faults are your own responsibility, not the result of other people's sabotage. Your successes are partly due to luck and the help of others, not solely your own genius. And most people are simply not thinking about you at all, whether for good or for ill. This sounds harsh and even cruel when you first hear it, but it is actually profoundly liberating when you fully accept it. When you realize that the world is not against you, you can stop fighting imaginary enemies who do not exist. You can stop interpreting innocent remarks as deliberate attacks on your dignity. You can stop collecting grievances and building cases against people who have done nothing wrong. You can stop being the eternal victim and start being an active agent in your own life. Russell offers a practical exercise that anyone can use when they feel slighted or attacked. Ask yourself 3 honest questions in that moment. First, is it genuinely possible that the other person meant no harm at all? Second, is it possible that they were simply being careless or thoughtless, not malicious? Third, is it possible that I am exaggerating the importance of this incident in my own mind? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you must let the incident go completely. Do not dwell on it. Do not rehearse arguments in your mind about what you should have said. Do not plan your revenge or your cutting response. Just let it go and move on with your life. And if the slight was genuinely real and intentional, if someone truly and deliberately wronged you, then you should deal with it directly and calmly, without drama or escalation. Tell the person clearly what happened and how it affected you. Ask for what you need to make the situation right, and then move forward without carrying resentment. The person with persecution mania cannot do any of this because he is stuck in the past, endlessly replaying old wounds and grievances. He has built his entire identity around being a victim, and he will not give up that identity because it gives him a sense of meaning and moral superiority. But if you genuinely want to be happy, you must give up the victim identity. You must stop being the person to whom things happen and start being the person who makes things happen. Not because the world is perfectly fair or just because it is not, but because the victim role is a prison with walls made of your own thoughts, and only you hold the key to the door. Chapter 9. Fear of public opinion. You are wearing a mask right now, and you have been wearing it for so long that you have almost forgotten what your real face looks like. Everyone around you is wearing a mask too, a carefully constructed version of themselves, designed to be acceptable and likable and safe. You learned to put this mask on very early in your life, when you were just a small child. Be good, your parents told you, which really meant be convenient and easy to manage. Be polite, your teachers told you, which really meant do not cause any trouble for us. Do not stand out, your society told you, because standing out is dangerous and attracts attention. Do not make trouble, your culture told you, because trouble is the thing that gets you punished. And slowly, year after year, the mask became your face. You forgot who you were underneath all the careful performance. You forgot what you actually wanted and valued and believed before you learned what you were supposed to want and value and believe. Russell identifies this as the fear of public opinion, and he considers it one of the greatest obstacles to genuine happiness in the modern world. The fear begins in earliest childhood and never stops shaping you. Parents reward conformity with approval and affection. They punish individuality with disapproval and withdrawal of love. Teachers praise students who follow instructions without questioning. They penalize students who ask difficult questions or go in unexpected directions. The media and advertising tell you constantly what normal people do and buy and think and feel. And by the time you reach adulthood, you have learned one lesson above all others. It is dangerous and costly to be yourself. So you hide your real self more and more deeply. You choose a safe and respectable career instead of a passionate and meaningful one, because the safe career has status and security. You marry the person your family approves of instead of the person you truly love, because the approved marriage causes less conflict. You express the opinions that are acceptable in your social circle instead of your real opinions, because you fear being judged and rejected. You live an entire life that looks perfect and admirable from the outside, and it feels completely empty and hollow from the inside. This is the great tragedy of the modern world, a tragedy that has only become worse since Russell wrote about it. The pressure to conform has intensified with social media and constant connectivity. Your every opinion and choice can now be judged by thousands of people instantly. The cost of being yourself has become higher than ever, and so people hide more deeply than ever before. The cure for this fear is courage, the most fundamental of all the virtues. Not the courage to fight in battle, which is common enough, but the courage to be disliked, the courage to be different, the courage to live according to your own values rather than the values imposed on you by others. This does not mean becoming a rebel for the sake of rebellion, opposing everything simply to be oppositional. That is just another form of conformity, conforming to the expectations of the rebel group. It means being genuinely authentic, knowing what you truly value and believe, and having the courage to live by those values even when others disapprove. Even when you stand alone, even when it costs you something. Russell points out a strange and encouraging fact that most people do not realize. Other people are far less interested in you than you think they are. They are too busy with their own lives, their own problems, their own insecurities, to spend much time judging you. The fear you feel of their opinion is largely exaggerated in your own mind. You imagine them noticing and criticizing every small thing you do. In reality, they barely notice you at all, because they are too focused on themselves. And even if they do judge you negatively, their judgment does not define who you are. It is just their opinion, nothing more, nothing less. Only your own judgment of yourself ultimately matters. The person who has truly conquered the fear of public opinion is free in a way that most people cannot even imagine. That person can wear whatever clothes they like without worrying about fashion. Say what they genuinely think without filtering every word. Love whom they choose without seeking permission. Live where they want without needing approval. That person is not a puppet dancing on strings controlled by others. That person is a genuine human being, living an authentic life. This kind of freedom is not cheap. It costs you the comfort of fitting in and being approved of. It costs you the safety of being like everyone else. It costs you the easy approval of people who only like you when you conform. But it buys you something far more valuable than anything it costs. It buys you the happiness of being yourself, the deep satisfaction of living your own life according to your own values, the peace that comes when the internal and external versions of you finally match. Russell offers a memorable thought. If you are going to be unhappy, and some unhappiness is inevitable in any life, at least be unhappy for reasons that are genuinely your own. Do not waste your unhappiness on trying to please people you do not even respect. That is the worst kind of unhappiness, a complete waste of your limited time on this earth. The door to freedom is always standing open in front of you, but you must be the one who walks through it. No one else can do that for you. Chapter 10. Is happiness still possible? So far in this book, Russell has examined the causes of unhappiness in great detail. He has looked at competition and boredom, at fatigue and envy, at the sense of sin and persecution mania, and the fear of public opinion. He has shown you the traps that the modern world sets for your happiness. He has revealed the patterns of thought and behavior that keeps so many people miserable, and now he arrives at the turning point of the entire book. He asks a question that sounds strange coming from a philosopher. Is happiness still actually possible in this complicated modern world? He has heard his intellectual friends in London and Paris and New York say no with great confidence. They have convinced themselves and each other that modern life has made genuine happiness impossible forever. The world is too complex and fast and mechanical and commercial. There is too much noise and too little silence. There is too much artificial stimulation and too little genuine satisfaction. There is too much meaningless work and too little meaningful purpose. These arguments sound convincing when you hear them in intellectual circles. They sound sophisticated and deep and wise. But Russell does not believe them for a moment, and he has evidence from his own observation to prove why. He looks at his gardener, a man who is well over 70 years old. This man bicycles 16 hilly miles to and from his work every single day. He works hard in the garden from morning until evening in all kinds of weather. He wages a perpetual war against the rabbits that try to eat his vegetables. He speaks of those rabbits with tremendous passion and indignation. He talks about them exactly the way Scotland Yard talks about dangerous Bolsheviks and revolutionaries. He considers them dark, designing, cunning, and ferocious enemies that can only be defeated by a strategy equal to their own. This gardener can neither read nor write a single word. He has never read a book about philosophy or psychology. He has never heard of the fashionable theories of existential despair and the meaninglessness of life. He has no idea that intellectuals have declared happiness to be impossible in the modern age, and this man is absolutely bursting with happiness and vitality and zest for life. His joy seems inexhaustible, and the rabbits are what supply it. Every day he defeats them, and every day they come back, and every day he fights them again. He is like the heroes of Valhalla in Norse mythology, who hunt a wild boar every day, kill it every evening, and find it miraculously alive again the next morning to be hunted once more. This repetitive cycle does not bore him or frustrate him. It gives his life meaning and purpose and daily satisfaction. Then Russell looks at the men of science he knows in the universities. The scientists, he observes, are among the happiest people he has ever met in his entire life. Their work absorbs them completely and gives them deep satisfaction. They achieve results that are genuinely important, not only to themselves, but to the world. The public respects them for their contributions, even when the public cannot understand what they have actually done. Their lives are full of interest and purpose and meaning. When people cannot understand a poem or a painting, they conclude that it is a bad poem or painting. But when they cannot understand the theory of relativity, they conclude that their own education has been insufficient. So, Einstein is honored and celebrated and respected, while the best painters and poets are often left to starve in obscurity. Russell concludes from these observations that happiness comes in two distinct forms. There is plain happiness and fancy happiness. There is animal happiness and spiritual happiness. There is happiness of the heart and happiness of the head. Both forms are equally real and equally valuable. The first form of happiness is available to any human being, regardless of education or intelligence. It comes from simple sources like physical vigor, sufficient work, the overcoming of real obstacles, and the companionship of others. It comes from having a hobby that absorbs your attention completely. It comes from believing in a cause that is larger than yourself. The second form of happiness requires more cultivation and education. It comes from intellectual achievement, scientific discovery, artistic creation, and deep understanding of the world. Both forms of happiness share one essential quality that is the key to everything. They both come from looking outward, away from yourself, towards something genuinely interesting outside your own mind. The unhappy intellectual sits alone in his room, reading books about despair, and writing poems about meaninglessness. He believes he is profound and deep for being unhappy. But in reality, he is just self-absorbed and trapped inside his own head. The happy person is out in the world doing something real, fighting rabbits in the garden, fixing engines in a workshop, painting pictures in a studio, raising children in a home, solving problems in a laboratory. This person is too busy actually living to spend much time worrying about the meaning of life. And in the very act of living fully, meaning finds that person without being chased. So Russell answers his own question with a firm and clear yes. Happiness is still possible in the modern world. It has always been possible, and it always will be possible, but only if you stop endlessly debating whether it is possible, and start doing the things that actually make you happy. The answer is not found in philosophy books or intellectual discussions. The answer is found in action, in the kind of action that connects you to life, to other people, to the world outside your own head. And that is exactly where all the following chapters of this book will lead you. Chapter 11. Zest. Imagine for a moment that there are two identical sausage machines sitting side by side in a factory. Both machines are exquisitely constructed for the same purpose. Both are designed to transform raw pig meat into delicious sausages with perfect efficiency. The first machine retains its full zest for the work it was built to do. It eagerly accepts the pig meat that is fed into it. It transforms this raw material into sausages endlessly, day after day, year after year. It is completely fulfilled in its function and produces excellent results. The second machine looks at the pig meat being offered to it and says with contempt, "What is this ordinary pig meat to me? My own internal mechanisms are far more interesting and wonderful than any common pig could ever be. I refuse to accept this humble food. Instead, I will turn my attention inward and study my own magnificent construction." So the second machine refuses the pig meat and begins examining its own internal parts. But without the raw material that it was designed to process, its internal mechanisms begin to malfunction. The more it studies itself, the more empty and meaningless its own workings appear to it. All the intricate and beautiful apparatus that was designed for transforming pig into sausages stands completely still. No sausages are produced, no purpose is fulfilled, no satisfaction is ever achieved. This second machine has lost its zest, the fundamental appetite for life and work that makes everything else possible. Russell uses this memorable analogy to introduce the single most universal quality he has observed in happy people. He calls it zest, and it is the quality of being genuinely interested in the world around you. Zest is the opposite of boredom and cynicism and weary sophistication. It is the opposite of the attitude that says nothing is worth caring about, nothing is worth getting excited about, nothing is worth making an effort for. The person with zest approaches life the way a genuinely hungry person approaches a delicious meal. That person enjoys the meal completely, savors every bite, and wants more when it is finished. The person without zest approaches life the way a person who has eaten too many meals approaches yet another plate of food. Everything is boring and tasteless and the same as everything else. Nothing can excite or interest that person anymore. Russell wants you to understand that zest can be directed at large things or at small things. It does not matter what you are interested in, only that you are interested in something. He gives the example of Sherlock Holmes, the famous detective created by Arthur Conan Doyle. Holmes once picked up a simple hat that happened to be lying in the street. He looked at it carefully for a moment and then made a series of remarkable deductions. The owner of this hat, Holmes said, has come down in the world as a result of drinking. His wife no longer loves him as she used to. Life could never possibly be boring for a man to whom a discarded hat offered such a wealth of interest and revelation. Think about a simple country walk and how differently different people experience it. One person notices all the birds they see and hear along the way. identifying each species by its song and flight pattern. Another person notices all the plants and trees, observing the different species and their stages of growth. Another person is interested in the geology of the landscape, noticing the rock formations and soil types. Another person pays attention to the agriculture, seeing what crops are being grown and how the farming is done. Each of these people is interested in something real and genuine. Each of them is enriched by their walk in a way that the person who notices nothing at all cannot share. The person who notices nothing returns from the walk with nothing but tired feet. Zest does not come from the outside world, no matter how interesting that world might be. It comes from inside you, from a decision you make about how you will approach life. It is a skill that you can deliberately develop and strengthen with practice. By choosing to pay attention to things you normally overlook, by choosing to be curious about things you normally ignore, by choosing to find genuine interest in ordinary things that you normally take for granted. The person with genuine zest has a tremendous advantage in the pursuit of happiness. That person is not at the mercy of fate or circumstances in the same way. If one source of enjoyment is taken away or becomes unavailable, there are many others to take its place. If a friendship ends, the zestful person has other interests to sustain them. If a career path closes, the zestful person finds new directions to explore. If a physical ability declines with age, the zestful person discovers new activities to engage in. The happiness of the zestful person does not depend on a single fragile thread. It flows from a whole approach to life that applies to everything. This is why zest is absolutely essential to happiness. It is the doorway through which all other joys enter your life. Without zest, the world is gray and flat and uninteresting no matter how much you have. With zest, the world is full of color and meaning and possibility no matter how little you have. Russell says that people lose their zest, mostly because of restrictions imposed by civilized life. But the restrictions are not the whole story. Even within the narrowest circumstances, you can choose to bring zest with you. The choice is yours to make. You can be the first sausage machine, eager and interested and fulfilled. Or you can be the second, turned inward and empty and purposeless. The raw material of life is still being offered to you every single day. The only question is whether you still have the appetite to receive it. Chapter 12. Affection. What is the single greatest source of zest and vitality in human life? Russell has a clear and direct answer based on his observation of people. It is the feeling of being genuinely loved by someone else. When you know deep in your bones that someone cares about you, not for what you can do for them or what you can give them, but simply for who you are as a unique human being, your energy expands dramatically, your world opens up with new possibilities, you feel safe enough to explore and take risks and grow. You feel secure enough to face difficulties and overcome challenges. This feeling of being loved is not a luxury or an extra in life. It is a fundamental human need as basic as food and shelter. The child who is loved by his parents accepts their affection as naturally as he accepts the air he breathes. He does not think about it consciously or analyze it, but it shapes his entire personality and approach to life. He is confident and curious and brave because he knows there is a safe base to return to when things go wrong. He explores the world with enthusiasm and adventure because he is not afraid of being abandoned. The child who is not loved is completely different in his development. He becomes timid and afraid of everything new. He turns inward and becomes preoccupied with his own thoughts. He thinks too much about life and death and the meaning of existence. He becomes an introvert, not by natural inclination but by necessity. He has no safe harbor to return to, so he cannot risk exploring the unknown. This pattern continues directly into adult life with the same dynamics playing out. The adult who feels loved and supported is fundamentally secure. That person can face career setbacks and personal disappointments. That person can take calculated risks and accept the possibility of failure. That person can make mistakes and still feel worthy of love. The adult who feels unloved or inadequately loved is always on edge. That person expects rejection from others and prepares for it in advance. That person defends against intimacy before intimacy can hurt them. And tragically, in this defensive posture, that person pushes away the very love they most need. Russell makes a subtle but important distinction between two different kinds of affection. The first kind is like admiring a beautiful coastline from the safety of a sturdy ship on a calm day. You appreciate the beauty of the coast with genuine pleasure. You enjoy it thoroughly, without needing anything from it. Your enjoyment is pure and free and generous. The second kind of affection is like swimming desperately toward a coast after your ship has been wrecked in a storm. You cling to the shore with all your strength because your life depends on it. Your love for the land is driven by desperate need, not by free appreciation. Its beauty or ugliness is irrelevant compared to your need for safety. The first kind of affection is healthy and generous and life-giving. It flows outward toward the other person without demanding repayment. It enjoys the other person for who they are, not for what they can provide. The second kind of affection is needy and grasping and possessive. It demands constant reassurance and proof of love. It is always afraid of losing what it has. Both kinds of love are natural and both have their appropriate place in life. But the healthiest and most satisfying relationships are built primarily on the first kind, where two people give love freely to each other without keeping score, where each person finds the whole world more interesting and beautiful because the other person exists. This is the kind of affection that makes deep and lasting happiness possible. Russell also warns against a dangerous type of person that he has observed. These are people who suck the vitality out of everyone around them. They receive love and attention and energy from others, but they give almost nothing of substance in return. They go through relationships like vampires, draining one victim after another. The people around them grow pale and dim and exhausted while the vampire thrives. These people use others as fuel for their own energy. They are not genuinely interested in the people they claim to love. They are only interested in the stimulation and support those people provide. This behavior usually comes from some deep defect in their own nature. But it is very difficult to diagnose or cure because the vampire often appears charming and attractive. Russell has a simple advice about this pattern. Do not be this kind of person yourself, and do not allow yourself to be drained by someone else who is. The best and most genuine kind of affection is fully reciprocal. It is a mutual giving where both parties benefit equally. It is a shared joy that multiplies when it is divided. It is a common good that grows larger as it is shared. And it is absolutely essential to the conquest of happiness. Because the person who cannot love or receive love, who walls himself off from genuine human warmth, that person is living in a prison with walls built of his own fears, and no amount of external success or achievement can compensate for this fundamental imprisonment. The door to that prison is opened by love, but you must be willing to walk through it. Chapter 13. The family, of all the human institutions that have come down to us from the ancient past, none has been more severely shaken and disorganized by modern life than the family. Bertrand Russell wrote about this problem with remarkable foresight in 1930. He saw the cracks forming in the foundation of family life long before they became the chasms we see today. The family should be the single greatest source of human happiness and security in the world. It should be the place where you are loved unconditionally, where you belong completely, where you are accepted exactly as you are. It should be the safe harbor that you return to again and again throughout your life. But for a very large number of people, perhaps even the majority, the family is not a source of happiness at all. It is a source of constant anxiety, resentment, guilt, and obligation. They dread family gatherings and holidays spent with relatives. They feel tense and irritable around their parents. They resent the demands that their children make on their time and energy. They look at their family responsibilities as a burden to be endured rather than a gift to be enjoyed. Russell identifies the main source of this problem with great precision from his observation of family life in the Western. The central issue is a dramatic change in the position and role of women in modern society. In previous centuries, women had no realistic alternative to marriage and motherhood. An unmarried woman was dependent on her father or brothers for survival. She had no legal right to own property, no access to higher education, no career path open to her. Marriage was not a choice she made freely. It was the only path available for a legitimate and respectable life, and so women married and had children because the alternatives were poverty and social disgrace. Under this old system, the father was the absolute authority in the family. His word was law. His decisions were final. His wife and children were his property in a very real legal and practical sense. The children were expected to obey their parents unquestioningly, even after they became adults themselves. This old system was repressive and unjust to women and children alike. But it did provide a certain clarity and stability in family relationships. Everyone knew their place and role and expected duties. There were clear rules about what was required of each family member. The system has now broken down almost completely in the modern world, and Russell believes this breakdown is fundamentally good and right and necessary. Women now have choices that their grandmothers could never have imagined. They can get an education and build a career and earn their own income. They can choose whether to marry and when and whom. They can decide whether to have children and how many and at what age. They can leave an unhappy marriage without being condemned to lifelong poverty and disgrace. All of these changes are genuine progress for human freedom and dignity. But every great advance in freedom also creates new problems that must be solved. And the new problem of the modern family is that women now carry an impossible double burden. They are expected to be successful professionals with demanding careers and ambitious goals. They are also expected to be devoted mothers who give their children all the time and attention they need. These two expectations are in direct and irreconcilable conflict with each other. No human being can excel at both simultaneously without paying a terrible price, and that price is usually paid in exhaustion, resentment, and diminished love for everyone involved. Russell saw this problem emerging clearly in his time. He observed that when a woman has to choose between her career and her children, she is placed in an impossible position. If she chooses her career, she may feel guilty and inadequate as a mother. If she chooses her children, she may feel resentful about the professional opportunities she has given up. Either way, the family becomes a source of tension and unhappiness rather than a source of joy and fulfillment. Russell also identifies another practical problem that has made family life harder than it used to be: the decline of domestic service and the support of extended family. In previous generations, middle-class women had help with the practical work of running a home. There were servants to clean the house and cook the meals and look after the children. There were grandparents and aunts and cousins living nearby who could help with childcare and household tasks. Today, most families live far from their relatives. Both parents work full-time jobs. There is no one to help with the endless tasks of keeping a household running. The modern mother is expected to be a breadwinner, a housekeeper, a cook, a chauffeur, a tutor, a nurse, and a social coordinator, all at the same time with almost no support. Russell describes the consequence of this impossible burden with compassion and insight. The woman who begins her marriage young and charming and full of vitality can become within a few years a tired, irritable, and depressed person. Her mind has been narrowed by the endless trivial details of housework. Her spirit has been crushed by the monotony of daily tasks. Her charm has been worn away by exhaustion and frustration. This is not because she is weak or inadequate in any way. It is because she has been given an impossible task that no single human being could accomplish well. Russell then turns to the most important element of family happiness, the relationship between parents and their children. He argues that the single most important quality for successful parenthood is genuine respect for the child as an independent person in their own right. The parent who wants to raise a happy child must first give up the desire for power and control over that child's life. This is much harder than it sounds because the desire for power over our children is deeply rooted in human nature. We brought them into the world, and we feel responsible for everything that happens to them. We want to protect them from every mistake and every pain and every disappointment. We want to guide them toward the choices we believe are best for them. But this well-intentioned desire for control almost always backfires and produces the opposite of what we intend. The child who is controlled too tightly becomes either rebellious or passive. The rebellious child fights back against every attempt at control, often making self-destructive choices just to prove their independence. The passive child gives up their own will entirely and never learns to make decisions for themselves. Neither outcome produces a happy or well-adjusted adult. The best parent, Russell says, is one who does not sacrifice everything for their children, who does not live through their children's achievements, who does not demand gratitude and repayment for all the sacrifices they have made. The best parent is the one who has a full and satisfying life of their own, who loves their children deeply and genuinely, but does not need their children to fulfill their own unmet needs, who gives freely and generously to their children, without keeping a mental ledger of everything they have given and everything they are owed in return. That is the parent whose children will genuinely love them back. Russell suggests a radical rethinking of the parent-child relationship. Instead of a relationship based on authority and obedience and obligation, he proposes a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine affection and voluntary cooperation. A relationship where two people, the parent and the child, each respect the other's separate existence and genuine needs. This kind of relationship is harder to maintain than the old authoritarian model. It requires more patience and self-awareness and emotional maturity, but it produces immeasurably more happiness for everyone involved. And in the end, that is the only thing that really matters. The family was meant to be a source of love and security and joy, and it can still fulfill that purpose if we are willing to change our understanding of what it means to be a family. Not a hierarchy of power where some members dominate others, but a community of mutual support where each person is valued and respected for who they truly are. Chapter 14. Work. Bertrand Russell asks a question that most people never stop to consider because they take the answer completely for granted. Is work a source of happiness or a source of unhappiness for most people? The obvious answer that comes to mind for the average person is that work is a burden, a chore, a necessity that must be endured for the sake of earning a living. We work because we have to work, not because we want to work. We work because the alternative is poverty and starvation. We work because society demands that we contribute something measurable. But Russell turns this common assumption on its head with a bold and counterintuitive claim. Even the dullest and most boring work, he argues, is less painful than complete idleness. Why is this true? Because work fulfills several fundamental human needs that idleness cannot satisfy. The first and most basic need that work fulfills is the simple filling of time. Most human beings are not equipped to handle the vast empty hours of a day with nothing to do. The idle rich, Russell observes from his personal acquaintance with many of them, suffer unspeakably. They have freedom from all necessity and obligation. They can do whatever they want with their time. But the number of genuinely interesting things that any person can do purely for pleasure is surprisingly limited. You can travel to exotic places and hunt wild animals and fly aeroplanes and attend parties. But eventually, these activities lose their novelty and become as boring as everything else. The idle person runs out of ways to fill the endless empty hours. And with nothing to do, that person becomes lethargic, depressed, and deeply unhappy. Work fills at least 8 or 9 hours of every day with something that must be done. Even when the work is not particularly interesting or fulfilling, it serves this essential function of giving structure to the day. The second need that work fulfills is the sense of achievement and success. Almost all paid employment provides some measure of success, even if that measure is only the regular arrival of a pay packet. The size of your paycheck is a daily or weekly or monthly confirmation that your efforts are being valued by someone else. This is not the highest form of satisfaction, but it is a real and legitimate source of self-respect. The desire for income, Russell points out, is not just a desire for the things that money can buy. It is equally a desire for the recognition that success and achievement bring with them. The person who builds a reputation through their work, who can feel that they are achieving something that matters, that person has a foundation for happiness that the idler can never have. The third and deepest need that work fulfills is the exercise of skill. This is the source of the most profound satisfaction that work can provide. Any human being who has developed a genuine skill, whether it is playing the violin or repairing engines or performing surgery, enjoys using that skill deeply. The act of doing something well, of exercising a capacity that has been developed through practice and effort, is one of the deepest pleasures life has to offer. Russell gives memorable examples of this principle in action. The surgeon who performs a difficult operation with precision and skill experiences a satisfaction that goes far beyond the payment he receives. The pilot who lands a plane in difficult conditions feels a deep pride in their professional competence. The carpenter who creates a beautiful piece of furniture from raw wood experiences a creative joy that no amount of money can replace. Even the plumber, Russell says, he has heard though he has never actually met one, enjoys the satisfaction of solving practical problems with their hands and tools. The fourth and most profound need that work fulfills is the opportunity for construction. This is the deepest of all the satisfactions that work can offer. The opportunity to build something that lasts, something that continues to exist, and be useful even after you have finished working on it. The scientist who makes a genuine discovery has added something permanent to human knowledge. The artist who creates a genuine work of art has added something beautiful to human culture. The engineer who designs and builds a bridge has added something useful to human infrastructure. The farmer who grows food has added something nourishing to human sustenance. This act of construction, of building something that did not exist before, is one of the most satisfying experiences available to any human being. Russell contrasts the joy of construction with the joy of destruction. It is true that destruction can also be satisfying, but in a very different way. The joy of destruction is fiercer, more intense, but less lasting. When the enemy is finally dead, when the building is finally leveled, when the competition is finally defeated, your occupation is gone. You have nothing left to do with yourself. But the builder can look at what they have built again and again. The scientist can return to their discovery and find it just as satisfying. The artist can look at their finished work and experience the same pride. The teacher can see their former students and know that they contributed to their growth. Construction is a renewable source of satisfaction. Destruction is a one-time satisfaction that leaves emptiness behind. This is why Russell states with confidence that the men of science he has known are among the happiest people he has ever met. Their work is genuinely constructive. It uses their full intellectual abilities. It achieves results that matter to themselves and to the world, and the public respects them for their contributions. Russell makes one final observation about the role of work in happiness that is particularly relevant to our modern world. The happiest workers are those who have genuine control over their own work, who have the freedom to approach problems in their own way, who are trusted to manage their own time and resources, who are judged by results rather than by hours spent at a desk. The most unhappy workers are those who have no control, who are micromanaged, who are treated as interchangeable parts in a machine. The lesson is clear for anyone who wants to build a happy working life. Choose work that is genuinely constructive in some real sense. Choose work that allows you to exercise your best skills and abilities. Choose work that you can respect and feel proud of. Money is important for survival and security. But beyond a certain point, more money does not make up for work that is meaningless and soul-destroying. Without genuine satisfaction in your daily work, genuine happiness is almost impossible to achieve. Chapter 15. Impersonal Interests. You have a great enemy that you probably do not even recognize. It lives inside your own mind and it works against your happiness every single day without your awareness. That enemy is the habit of thinking about yourself all the time, of measuring everything by how it affects you personally, of seeing the world entirely through the narrow lens of your own desires and fears and problems. Russell has mentioned this problem several times already in this book. Now he returns to it with a practical remedy that he considers essential to genuine lasting happiness. He calls it the cultivation of impersonal interests. These are interests that have absolutely nothing to do with your own personal life, your work, your status, your family, or your problems. They are things you pursue purely for their own sake, for the joy and interest that they bring you. They are doors that open onto worlds that have nothing to do with your own small concerns. Russell gives a powerful example of why this matters so much. Consider a man who has built his entire life around a single passionate interest, a political campaign, a business venture, a scientific project. This man has invested everything in this one area of his life, his time, his energy, his hopes, his dreams, his self-respect, and then this single area of life goes wrong. The election is lost, the business fails, the experiment produces no results. Because this man has nothing else in his life, no other source of interest or satisfaction. His entire world collapses with the failure of his single project. He has built no refuges, no sanctuaries, no alternative sources of meaning. He is left with nothing at all. Now consider another man who has the same passionate commitment to his main work, but who also has many other genuine interests outside that work. He reads history for pleasure and follows the latest discoveries in archaeology. He loves classical music and goes to concerts regularly. He enjoys bird watching and knows the habits of every species in his region. He plays chess with friends on weekends. He gardens and takes genuine pleasure in watching things grow. When his main work fails or goes through a difficult period, this man still has his history books and his music and his birds and his chess and his garden. He has multiple worlds that he can retreat into when one world becomes painful. His happiness is not dependent on the success of a single venture. It is distributed across many different areas of his life. The first man who has only one interest is like a person who has bet their entire fortune on a single gamble. The second man who has many interests is like a person who has wisely distributed their investments across many different areas. When one investment fails, the others continue to support them. This is what Russell means by having impersonal interests as a buffer against misfortune. But impersonal interests serve an even deeper purpose than just being a safety net. They give you perspective on your own life and problems. When you are entirely absorbed in your own difficulties, they appear enormous and overwhelming. They fill your entire mental horizon. There is no room for anything else in your mind except your problems. They grow and expand until they seem to cover everything. But when you step away from your problems for a while and immerse yourself in something completely different, when you study the rise and fall of the Roman Empire and see how many civilizations have come and gone, when you learn about the distant galaxies and realize how small your problems are in the vast scale of the universe, when you follow the intricate development of a chess game and your mind is fully occupied with strategy and tactics, your own problems do not disappear magically, but they do shrink back to their actual size, which is usually much smaller than you thought they were. They are still there waiting for you when you return, but you return to them with a fresh perspective and renewed energy. You can see them more clearly because you have had a break from staring at them endlessly. You can find solutions more easily because your mind has been refreshed by a different kind of activity. Russell gives a powerful political example of how impersonal interests can improve your judgment and wisdom. Imagine that you are deeply committed to a political party and its cause. You work hard for your party's victory in an important election. Your commitment is passionate and genuine. This is a good thing because political engagement matters. But what if the path to victory for your party involves stirring up hostility toward a foreign nation? If your mental horizon is entirely filled with your political goals and ambitions, if you have no perspective on history and international relations, you will probably go along with this hostile strategy. You will win your immediate political battle, and you will contribute to long-term disaster in international relations. But if you have studied history and seen how nationalist hostility has led to war and destruction again and again, if you understand how slowly and painfully human civilization has emerged from barbarism, if you have the historical perspective to see beyond the immediate political battle, you will hesitate before taking the path of hostility. You will recognize that no short-term political victory is worth the risk of pushing the world backward into chaos and war. And if your party still loses the election despite your restraint, you will be sustained by the same historical perspective. Your defeat is a single moment in time. The slow development of human civilization continues regardless of who wins any particular election. Your personal political fortunes are not the same as the fate of humanity. Impersonal interests connect you to something much larger than yourself. They transform you from a small creature obsessed with its own tiny concerns into a citizen of the entire universe, someone who can see the whole grand spectacle of existence, the comedy and the tragedy, the triumph and the disaster, and still find the entire thing worth watching and participating in. The happiest people, Russell concludes, are those who have built this larger framework for their lives, those who can step back and see themselves from a distance, who can laugh at their own pretensions and forgive their own failures, who take their work seriously but do not take themselves too seriously. Developing these impersonal interests takes time and practice. They will not appear in your life by accident. You must deliberately and consciously seek them out, cultivate them over months and years. Build your refuges now, while you still have energy and curiosity. Because when the storms of life arrive, and they always do, you will need places to shelter. The person who has built a rich inner life with many sources of interest and joy, that person has many windows to look through when one view becomes painful. That person cannot be completely defeated by any single blow, because they have many places to stand. Chapter 16. Effort and Resignation. There is a doctrine that every wise person throughout history has eventually come to accept. It is a simple doctrine that sounds obvious when you hear it stated plainly. Happiness requires a balance between two opposite qualities. The first quality is effort, the active striving to change your circumstances and improve your situation. The second quality is resignation, the peaceful acceptance of what you cannot change no matter how hard you try. Russell admits freely that this doctrine of the golden mean between effort and resignation is not exciting or dramatic. When he was a young man full of passion and ambition, he rejected this doctrine completely. It seemed boring to him. It seemed like the wisdom of old, tired people who had given up on life. He preferred heroic extremes. He admired the romantic poets who burned with fierce intensity. He admired the revolutionaries who would tear down the whole world to build a better one. He admired the saints and mystics who renounced everything for spiritual perfection. But after a long life of experience, after achieving great success and suffering great disappointment, after winning and winning again, after loving deeply and losing what he loved, Russell arrived at the conclusion that the golden mean is true, not because it is exciting or romantic or dramatic, which it is not, but because it corresponds to the actual reality of human life. And truth, even unexciting truth, is more valuable than beautiful falsehood. Let us start with effort, the first half of the equation. Effort is necessary for happiness. This is not a moral judgment or a philosophical position. It is an observable fact about human nature. Without effort, without some meaningful form of active striving, human beings wither and decay. They become lethargic and depressed. They lose their sense of purpose and direction. They sink into a passive state that looks like peace from the outside, but feels like death from the inside. Russell chose the title The Conquest of Happiness deliberately. The word conquest implies effort, struggle, and active engagement with reality. Happiness is not a gift that falls into your lap while you sleep. It is not something you stumble upon accidentally while wandering through life. It is a prize that must be won through sustained and focused effort. Effort in the right direction, toward goals that are genuinely worth achieving. Effort that uses your best abilities and brings out your full potential. Effort that connects you to something larger than yourself. The man who puts no effort into anything gets nothing, not even contentment. He does not build friendships, so he is alone. He does not develop skills, so he is incompetent. He does not create anything, so his life leaves no trace. He does not care about anything, so nothing nourishes him. Effort is the price of admission to life. You must pay it if you want to be in the game at all. But effort alone is not enough. Effort without wisdom leads to burnout and frustration. The person who tries to control everything runs into the limits of human power again and again. There are things in life that you simply cannot change, no matter how hard you try. Your health will fail eventually, and no amount of effort can prevent aging and death. The people you love will have their own paths to follow, and no amount of effort can control them. The world will not always cooperate with your plans, and no amount of effort can force it to. If you cannot accept these fundamental realities of existence, if you struggle against them constantly, fighting battles that cannot be won, you will exhaust yourself for nothing. You will become more and more frustrated as the world refuses to bend to your will. Your efforts will make you miserable instead of happy. This is where resignation comes into the picture. Resignation is the wisdom to know what you can change and what you cannot, the serenity to accept the things you cannot change with grace and peace, and the courage to change the things you can with energy and determination. Russell makes a crucial distinction between two different kinds of resignation. The first kind is resignation born of despair. This resignation says that nothing matters, everything is hopeless, effort is futile, life has no meaning. This resignation does not produce peace. It produces a kind of living death where the person has given up completely. This person has retreated from life, withdrawn from engagement, stopped caring about anything. This is not wisdom, it is surrender. And surrender does not bring happiness. It brings a kind of numb emptiness that is worse than active suffering. The second kind of resignation is born of unconquerable hope. This is a much different attitude, even though it also involves acceptance of limits. This resignation says that some things cannot be changed, but not everything. The universe is larger than my personal desires, but not indifferent to all my efforts. I may fail in this particular attempt, but failure does not mean the end of all attempts. I may lose this particular battle, but the war for a better life continues. This kind of resignation is not a retreat from life. It is an expansion of your perspective to include something larger than yourself. When you place your hopes, not in a single specific outcome, but in a broader vision of life. When you shift your concern from your own personal success to the success of causes and values that matter to you. When you can accept a personal defeat while still believing in the possibility of larger progress. Then resignation becomes a source of strength, not weakness. Russell illustrates this with an example from science. The dedicated scientist may spend years on a particular line of research. The scientist may work harder and more intelligently than anyone else in the field. And still, the experiments may fail to produce the hoped-for results. The hypothesis may be wrong. The approach may be unproductive. The effort of years may lead nowhere. If the scientist has invested their entire sense of worth and meaning in this single line of research, the failure is devastating. That scientist may never recover their confidence or enthusiasm. But the scientist who has a larger perspective, who sees themselves as part of the ongoing enterprise of science itself, that scientist can accept a personal failure while still believing in the ultimate success of science. That scientist can let go of one approach and begin another with renewed energy. That scientist can accept disappointment without despair. The same principle applies to every area of life. The reformer whose political work is undone by the outbreak of war. The teacher whose most promising student leaves education. The parent whose child makes choices they deeply disagree with. The artist whose work is rejected by critics and public alike. In all these cases, the first kind of resignation would give up completely. The second kind of resignation makes an adjustment, shifts perspective, and continues. Russell offers practical guidance for applying this wisdom in daily life. Do not waste your precious energy on petty troubles that do not matter in the larger scheme of things. The person who rages at a missed train, who fumes at a badly cooked meal, who despairs over a smoky chimney, that person is wasting energy that could be used to change the world. Choose your battles with care and wisdom. Fight the important ones with all your strength and determination. Accept the small ones with grace and good humor. And in that acceptance, find a peace that no external circumstance can touch. This is the golden mean between effort and resignation. It is not exciting or romantic or dramatic. Russell admits this freely, but it is true, and truth that works is more valuable than poetry that does not. The conquest of happiness is not about winning every single battle. In fact, it is not about winning at all in the way most people think. It is about knowing which battles are worth fighting and which are better left unfought. It is about when to push forward with all your strength and when to release and let go. The wise person does not surrender to fate, but neither does that person fight against the universe itself. They work with reality, not against it. They use the currents of life instead of trying to swim against them. And in this intelligent cooperation with what is, they discover a kind of happiness that cannot be defeated by any external circumstance. Not because they have controlled everything, but because they have learned to accept what they cannot control. And in that acceptance, they have found something deeper than victory. They have found peace. Chapter 17. The Happy Man. You think happiness requires a complicated creed. Many people believe this. Mr. Joseph Wood Crutch thinks happiness is impossible without a religious kind of belief. You may believe your sorrows have complicated intellectual sources, but these beliefs are only symptoms. They are not the genuine causes of either happiness or unhappiness. The unhappy man will, as a rule, adopt an unhappy creed. The happy man will adopt a happy creed. Each attributes his happiness or unhappiness to his beliefs. But the real causation runs the other way around. Happiness depends partly on external circumstances and partly on yourself. This book has been concerned with the part that depends on yourself. Certain things are indispensable for most people. They are simple things: food and shelter. Without these, the struggle for survival consumes all your energy. Health. Without it, even the simplest pleasures are difficult. Love. Without it, you feel cut off from human warmth. Successful work. Without it, you lack a sense of purpose and accomplishment, the respect of your own community. Without it, you feel isolated and judged. For some people, parenthood is also essential. Where these things are lacking, only the exceptional man can achieve happiness. But where they can be enjoyed or obtained by well-directed effort, the situation changes. If you are still unhappy when these basics are in place, something else is wrong. A psychological maladjustment. If it is very grave, you may need a psychiatrist. But in ordinary cases, you can cure this yourself, if you set about it in the right way. Where outward circumstances are not definitely unfortunate, you should be able to achieve happiness. The recipe for happiness is remarkably simple. Your passions and interests must be directed outward, not inward. In education and in adjusting yourself to the world, aim at this outward direction. Avoid the passions that shut you up in yourself. They are one of the worst kinds of prisons. It is not the nature of most men to be happy in a prison, and the passions that shut you up in yourself constitute a terrible kind of prison. Among such passions, some of the most common are fear, envy, the sense of sin, self-pity, and self-admiration. In all these, your desires center upon yourself. You have no genuine interest in the outer world. You only fear that it might injure you, or fail to feed your ego. Fear is the principal reason men refuse to admit facts. They wrap themselves in a warm garment of myth. They prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. But the thorns of reality tear the warm garment. The cold blasts penetrate through the rents. The man accustomed to the warmth of self-deception suffers far more than a man hardened to reality from the first. Moreover, those who deceive themselves generally know at bottom that they are doing so. They live in a state of constant apprehension. They dread some untoward event that will force unwelcome realizations upon them. They are never truly at peace. So what can you do if you are unhappy because you are encased in self? The difficulty is real. If you continue to think about the causes of your unhappiness, you remain self-centered. You cannot get outside the vicious circle by thinking about it. Genuine interests are the only way out, not simulated interests adopted merely as medicine. If your trouble is a sense of sin, conscious or unconscious, you can take action. First, persuade your conscious mind that you have no reason to feel sinful. You have done nothing that warrants this guilt. Examine the evidence honestly. Then plant this rational conviction in your unconscious mind. Use the kind of technique considered in earlier chapters. The technique of allowing rational conviction to sink below the level of consciousness. Repeat the truth until it settles into your bones. Meanwhile, occupy yourself with some more or less neutral activity. Something that takes your mind off the inner turmoil. Gardening, carpentry, walking, reading. If you succeed in dispelling the sense of sin, objective interests will arise. They will arise spontaneously from within you. You do not need to force them. If your trouble is self-pity, deal with it the same way. First, persuade yourself that nothing is extraordinarily unfortunate in your circumstances. There is nothing uniquely terrible about your lot. You are not singled out by fate for special suffering. Others have faced worse and found their way through. Count your blessings instead of your grievances. If fear is your trouble, practice exercises designed to give courage. Courage in war has been recognized since time immemorial as an important virtue. A great part of the training of boys and young men has been devoted to producing fearlessness in battle. But moral courage and intellectual courage have been much less studied. They too have their technique. Admit to yourself every day at least one painful truth. You will find this quite as useful as the Boy Scouts' daily kind action. Face something you have been avoiding. Acknowledge a weakness you have been hiding. Look directly at a fact that makes you uncomfortable. Do this day after day. Teach yourself to feel that life would still be worth living, even if you were not immeasurably superior to all your friends in virtue and intelligence. This is harder than it sounds, but it is essential. Such exercises prolonged through several years will at last enable you to admit facts without flinching. They will free you from the empire of fear over a very large field. What objective interests will arise in you? That must be left to the spontaneous workings of your nature and to the promptings of external circumstances. Do not command yourself in advance to be interested in stamp collecting. Do not set to work to collect stamps as a cure for unhappiness. It may well happen that you fail altogether to find it interesting. Only what genuinely interests you can be of any use to you. But you may be pretty sure that genuine objective interests will grow up. As soon as you have learned not to be immersed in self, the happy life is to an extraordinary extent the same as the good life. Professional moralists have made too much of self-denial. They have put the emphasis in the wrong place. Conscious self-denial leaves you self-absorbed. You become vividly aware of what you have sacrificed. You keep a mental ledger of your virtue. It fails of its immediate object, and almost always of its ultimate purpose. What is needed is not self-denial. It is that kind of outward direction of interest, which leads spontaneously and naturally to the same acts, that a person absorbed in the pursuit of his own virtue could only perform through conscious self-denial. Russell has written this book as a hedonist. He regards happiness as the good. But the acts recommended by the hedonist are on the whole the same as those recommended by the sane moralist. The moralist too often stresses the act rather than the state of mind. Though this is not universally true, the effects of an act upon the agent depend on his state of mind at the moment. If you see a child drowning and save it from a direct impulse to bring help, you emerge better. None the worse morally. Your action flows from who you are. If you save him because you reason that virtue demands it, you emerge worse, an even worse man than you were before. You have fed your vanity, not your soul. This seems paradoxical, but it is true. What applies in this extreme case applies in many other instances that are less obvious. There is another subtle difference worth noting. The attitude recommended here differs from that of traditional moralists. The traditional moralist says love should be unselfish. In a certain sense, he is right. Love should not be selfish beyond a point. But it should undoubtedly be of such a nature that your own happiness is bound up in its success. If a man invited a lady to marry him because he ardently desired her happiness and wanted opportunities for self-abnegation, she would not be pleased. She would sense something hollow in his proposal. You should desire the happiness of those you love, but not as an alternative to your own. You should desire it along with your own. Your joy and their joy become one. The whole antithesis between self and the rest of the world disappears. It disappears as soon as you have any genuine interest in persons or things outside yourself. The doctrine of self-denial implies a false separation between yourself and the world. Through genuine interests, you come to feel yourself part of the stream of life. You are not a hard, separate entity like a billiard ball. A billiard ball can have no relation with other billiard balls except collision. It rolls along its separate path and only touches others through impact. But you are not like this. You can participate in the flow of life. You can merge with something larger than yourself. All unhappiness depends on some kind of disintegration, or lack of integration. There is disintegration within the self. When your conscious and unconscious mind lack coordination, your inner life becomes a battlefield. There is lack of integration between self and society. When objective interests and affections do not knit them together, you stand apart from others, alone and alienated. The happy man suffers from neither of these failures of unity. His personality is not divided against itself. His personality is not pitted against the world. He feels himself a citizen of the universe. He enjoys freely the spectacle that it offers. He enjoys the joys that it affords. He is untroubled by the thought of death, because he feels himself not really separate, not separate from those who will come after him. His life flows into theirs. His existence participates in something eternal. It is in this profound instinctive union with the stream of life that the greatest joy is to be found. You can choose this for yourself. The prison door opens from the inside. No one else can open it for you. Step out into the current of life. Let your passions direct themselves outward. Let your interests flow freely into the world. Let your affections connect you to others without reserve. Let your work be a genuine expression of your nature. The happy life is not a distant ideal you must strain toward. It is a direction you take with each choice. It is a way of seeing the world around you. It is a way of being in the world. Be a citizen of the universe. Join the great stream of life that flows through all things. Feel the unity that connects you to everything. Know that you are not separate. There is no greater joy than this. There is no better good than this. This is the conquest of happiness. This is the good life itself.